I feel like we're hearing so many bits and bobs of Psalm 19, but I want us to hear the beginning of it too. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims God's handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. This has been a week of many, many speeches. And here's another one, just kidding. A sermon isn't a speech, not technically, though it is undeniable that some preachers are prone to getting on soapboxes and going on and on. I do try not to be one of them, but every once in a while I do have to apologize for a long sermon when I find myself too short on time to write a short one. Today's, by some miracle, isn't terribly long at all, which might be nice for all of us. This week we have heard speeches from a returning president, from more elected officials and pundits than perhaps we might want, and notably, a sermon that had a bit of a speech-like ending that has ruffled some feathers. This morning, we heard another speech, one by Jesus as recorded in the Gospel of Luke. Jesus read the scroll of Isaiah just as Beth just read the book of Luke, and when he finished, he sat down. Nothing particularly extraordinary in this reading, but all eyes were on him, probably because of the particular passage he read. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, Jesus begins to read, because God has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. God has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the year of Lord's favor. These are Isaiah's words that Jesus reads in temple. And the scripture is a lot like how the Right Reverend Marian Buttle concluded her sermon by speaking directly to President Trump. "Have mercy," she said, and this has gotten her in trouble. Jesus read from the scroll of Isaiah and tells of merciful things like freedom and recovery and health and good news and God's favor. And saying only this, and handing the scroll back to the attendant, got him noticed. And then he concluded his speech by sitting down in the pews. He concludes his speech by saying, "Today, this scripture has been fulfilled." This scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing, Jesus says. That's quite a statement, quite a testament to what has just happened. Here in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus knows who he is, and he knows that he has fulfilled this prophecy. And the synagogue goers then, like the inaugural church service goers this week, had many a tempest in their pot of tea about it. Who knew that mercy could be so controversial? Now, for his part, our new president has said some things that frankly have a lot of us worried. Rollbacks, talk of economic relations and sanctions with two of our closest neighbors, decreeing that there are only two genders, male and female in his language, and rolling back protections for any number of people who live on the margins or don't have the right paperwork to prove their right to be who they are and where they are. I suspect many of you have heard a speech or two this week, maybe at work or on the subway, maybe this morning here at church somebody gave you a speech about what's going on in the country. And people have a lot to say about what's going on. And yet our rhetoric seems to be trailing Bishop Buttle's call for mercy. So much has been said. And so much is being said about what has been said, I'm not here to add additional commentary. What I am here to do is to call attention to the acts of speech that are creating concern and causing harm. I do this by looking to Jesus, who tells us about good news for the poor and captives and physically different people. I wonder about what it would be like if more of our speeches modeled themselves on this great rabbi. I'm sure many of our mothers taught us all that if you don't have anything nice to say, just don't say anything. And I'm sure, too, that many of us far prefer the version from Steel Magnolias that says, if you don't have anything nice to say, come sit by me. But the truth of it is, of this week, is that there have always been a lot of not nice things being said. Now, maybe your mother also taught you that sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you. With all due respect to mothers and to mine, I think this is wrong. This sadly isn't true. Words do have the power to hurt. It is the gospel of Cher that tells us that words are like weapons. They wound sometimes. And I know I have instantly regretted many things that have just flown out of my mouth the moment I've seen their effect. I'm quick-tongued. I'm very forgiving, but as Patrick points out all too often, I don't forget. And I often look for patterns. The patterns of our speech, of Jesus's, of political leaders, of each other, here, wherever. The patterns of our speech have the power to wound and to heal, to take away and to give, to abdicate mercy or to show mercy. And I want more space for healing and giving and showing. Yesterday, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who works in the local restaurant that my husband and my Saturday morning routine frequents. This friend of mine is a proud father of an incredible child who's about 8 and in the local public school in our neighborhood. About 2 or 3 years ago, my friend, the waiter, asked if he could talk to me, and he pulled me aside. He told me that his child was having some questions about their gender and didn't identify with their birth sex. This child is a new generation and has a fluidity of their own understanding of gender that I frankly find remarkable. The child's dad does not, and asked me, as one of the only queer people he knew, what I thought. He also knows that I'm a therapist, and he asked me if I would be willing to meet with him, his wife, and the child. I said I'd be honored, and we met on a community playground a couple of weeks later so that I could talk to the child, to my friend, and meet his wife. The child's fine. Very healthy sense of self and place in the world, developmentally right on track. Mom and Dad were the ones that needed the work. Over the years, they've now done that, and these two people, local, a waiter and a receptionist, high school education, have become champions for their daughter. I've watched my friend wrestle with pronouns and slip up, but not anymore. He's asked me sometimes very personal questions that I am happy to answer as the spokesperson for all queer people, evidently, but as a way of helping to show a bigger world, a world of healing and giving and showing mercy, a world of paying attention to God's immense imagination and the beauty that is each of us. Yesterday, my friend pulled me aside, and I will admit to feeling really stupid for not having anticipated this conversation. I just missed it. This beautiful 8-year-old is scared. Her dad is scared and telling off anyone in his family that voted for, in his words, their own pocketbooks over his child. My friend was like a lion protecting his young yesterday, and I had the thought, my God, what a remarkable dad you are. What a remarkable dad. Lucky, lucky kiddo. The child went to school and, luckily also, has a bright and empathetic teacher, the very best of what we hope our teachers may be. But before the child went to school, her morning began with an outburst to her father and mother. I don't want people to hate me because of who I am. I think I'll just be a boy rather than being hated. This is the effect of speech, a frightened child, and a father ready to move heaven and earth to protect his beautiful, and really, I truly mean this, beautiful young girl. And I share this story with you with a bit of self-caution. Gender and sexuality are soapboxes I'm prone to hop on. and my own thoughts about how we use language to describe the very essence of who we are for another day. I will say, and here's where I'm cautious, that I do not agree with the president's assessment of gender and sex. I will also say that many of us, woke up on Tuesday morning with our own understanding, hard-fought and still not one, of our own gender eradicated and reduced to an old binary that simply doesn't hold. And I share this with you as an example of how speech causes harm. Stroke of a pen, something that somebody thinks is simple as, well, black and white, or male and female. Just a flippant remark, and legislation that goes along with it. How speeches can cause harm, real harm, and to invite us all to think this morning more like Jesus and how we can use speech to show mercy, to grow our understanding and to give the world our attention, and to show just some basic human kindness when confronted with the most basic fact that we are all not alike. Jesus concludes the speech we heard this morning with a statement of fact. The prophecy is fulfilled. Tick. And then, as we will hear next week, he goes on to prove his own adage that a prophet is never without honor except in their own town. And in his speech, which is a fulfillment of prophecy itself, Jesus invites us all into a bigger world, a world where justice and mercy live and where each of us has a place. And so often, we use our speech to limit our understanding, to say what we're not going to do, or to put others down or into a place where we think they should be. This isn't the Jesus way. The Jesus way is a way of listening to those who are hurting, or scared, or worried, and to meeting them where they are. He's listening underneath of the words to what's not being said as much as he's listening to what is being said. And each story that he hears in its fullness. He doesn't argue, and he usually responds with another story. Stories in stories, parables, speeches in speeches, so many words, but also so much space for silence, for listening, for being in community or church, and for writing ourselves into the narrative that Jesus wants to tell. There have been lists floating around this week about things to do and ways to resist any number of things that feel overwhelming or frankly just wrong, and how to help. To me, these feel like just another speech act. As well-intentioned as they may be, they're all too long, and they try to fix what, for a moment at least, might just need to be held. So as this speech or sermon, a sermon contains good news, that's one of the differences in my mind. As this time where I'm speaking comes to a close for the day, I invite us all to think about our speech, to be mindful of our language and prayerful about our intent, to speak words of truth and vulnerability like Bishop Buttle did to President Trump, to hold back and maybe don't say everything that's on your mind, to think, to discern, to be merciful. And for those days when mercy feels like too high a bar, then at least perhaps maybe we can just be kind. If you don't have anything nice to say, yes, come sit by me and maybe don't tell me anything. But if you do have something nice to say, if you have a good word, if you have a sign of affection, if you have a story that's going to inspire, if you have good news or a benediction, a good speech, then by all means say it. It needs to be said. The world is listening. Mercy and kindness can be yours. And our speech may help it be so. And as you learn to speak these things, better yet, show it.